Okay, hello and welcome to Ferguson Library Presents the Introduction to Web Building, HTML and CSS. So today we're taking a break from all of the Microsoft Office programming that we've been doing, and today we're going to be looking at how to build a basic website using the foundational structure, the building blocks of the World Wide Web, HTML and CSS. So, to first start off there and such, I just want to kind of go over some things here with the YouTube platform. So first off, if you have any questions at any time during the class, please ask them in the chat. What you're seeing is a little slightly delayed from what I'm presenting right now, but I will see your questions and I will answer them. I'll acknowledge the question and I'll answer it at a time when I think it's fitting, a good time to answer it and go back and kind of recover the information on that there. The next thing that you want to do before we start the class is you're going to want to go to the website right up here, fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes. And that's going to bring you to this page here where I have all of the online class resources. So it has our not really quite upcoming class schedule anymore because it's the last one on the schedule here. We are going to be probably redoing some of these classes again in May. I have to sit down and figure out the schedule for that and what's going to be taught. Might be some different things, might be some of the same things. In the survey that I'll share the link with you at the very end of the class. If there's anything that you would like us to try to teach, if we have the capability of doing it, please make suggestions in there. Or if you'd like to see any of these here, if there's anything in particular that you would like to go over again, please let me know. If you did miss any of our past classes, the recordings are all available on YouTube, and I have links here to all of the past recordings. But to get on to what else you'll find on this website, if you scroll down, there'll be all of these different tabs for the variety of different classes. You'll want to click on the Intro to Web Building HTML and CSS tab. This class is going to require a little bit more setup than the Microsoft Office classes did. For those, you just really need to have Microsoft Office and download kind of the exercise files. Here, I'm going to actually want you to download Notepad++. So Notepad++ is an enriched text editor. So it looks like this here. And we'll get kind of more into Notepad++ when we start working with it there. But you click this link here, it will take, actually this link goes directly to the Windows installer. If you're on a Mac, I can get you the link for the Mac download on there, but this will go to the Windows installer. You download it, run the exe file that it has to install the file. If you have questions about that, let me know in the chat. Moving down, we have the link here to the handout for this class, which is this PDF file here. So this is going to have the variety of different exercises that we're working, as well as at the end there is some reference information about HTML and CSS on there as well too. Moving on, we have down here, there's going to be, and this is, I have it marked as handout, but these are actually going to be the exercise files. These download as a zip file. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to download this probably to a location on your desktop, someplace that's easy to find on your computer, your download folder, your desktop, your documents, someplace that's easy to find. And what it'll do actually is it will download, let me find the file here, it will download this intro HTML CSS.zip file that you'll want to extract. Now if you're using Windows 10 like I am, the easiest thing to do is to click on the file. You'll see up on your toolbar here, you'll get a compressed folder tools option. Click on that and then click the extract all. Mine's grayed out because I have other software that's working, but this here should work for you in Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 8. And if you're on Windows 7, double click the file and it will give you the option to be able to decompress the file. Once it's unzipped, it should create a folder, Intro to HTML and CSS. And inside that folder here will be some of the stuff that we'll be working on, including the a document version of the handout that we're working with, and then some of the files that we'll be working on with the class. Let me know if you have any questions getting those materials off of the online technology website here. And so then I'm just going to kind of start going into, I'll start going into my introduction here. If there's questions, let me know and I'll kind of help you kind of get set up to kind of do the class here, and then we'll start working with the HTML. So to start off, coming into this class, some of the stuff you should already know. You should know basic computer operation, navigating Windows and Windows files and directories, because we are going to be like saving things into folders and then opening things up. How to open and save files in Windows, just like I was saying there, and then how to navigate the World Wide Web. These are just kind of the basic skills. You don't need to have any knowledge of HTML or CSS or how the web works to do this class. This is the reason why this is an introduction to web building. This is an introduction to those very kind of foundations of the World Wide Web. And you don't need to know anything about that to kind of get into the class. What we are going to be covering is that we're going to be we're going to create a basic web page from scratch using HTML. So we're going to write everything in HTML and have a very basic web page. And then we're going to edit the design of that web page, the look and how the page looks work with CSS. So we're going to build the web page, and then we're going to change the design of it and look at how HTML and CSS work together and how to use each of them there to build stuff on the web. So if there's any questions, let me know if there's any questions about that. I'll wait just a bit to see if anything comes up, because as I mentioned, you're at a little bit more of a delay than how I'm presenting, so I just want to make sure that everybody gets caught up. Let me know if you have any issues getting the files from the web page right up here in order to kind of follow along. Also, in the past, look, what I've done with these classes is I will demonstrate a skill, and then I will give you about 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how long I think it will take to kind of replicate that there, to go off and do it, because you're probably watching this on your screen, and then you're going to have to change windows to go and kind of work in Notepad++, unless you've, and so I just kind of want to make sure that people have time to work on that there, and it's a good time to ask questions at that point there. All of the instructions will be kind of verbatim from the handout, so you can actually follow the step-by-step instructions that I have written in the handout as well too, to kind of keep up and follow along. So let's first take a look at HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and so what it is the standard markup language. Markup language is kind of a coding to define how text gets displayed and presented on the World Wide Web. So things like the markup language is what tells, okay, this is going to be a bold, this is going to be heading, this section here is a paragraph, this is an image, and kind of the information about that there. And so the HTML, the markup language, is the instructions that you place inside around the content that you write, so that a piece of software like a web browser knows how to display that text. And so that's the HTML is rendered and displayed. So a web browser looks at an HTML file, and it has instructions on how to treat different markup tags in there. So things like if something's bold, you have a B tag, and we'll be looking at this here when we start working on things. The browser knows what to do with that B tag when it sees it, or that bold tag. You can modify what the browser does with that information using CSS. So when we get to CSS in the second part of this class, we'll be able to actually change how the browser reads the markup language. So HTML is built up of, consists of what they call HTML elements. And so the elements are the building block of web pages. And so let me actually just give you, I'm going to actually demonstrate quickly kind of what an HTML page should look like here. Or at least what the HTML text looks like here. So I'm just opening this up, and I'm going to change over to here. So I'm going to actually zoom in on this. Let's see if, yep, there we go. Zoom in a bit so you can kind of see on here and such. So the HTML, the different elements are these like purple things enclosed in these brackets here. So get very used to kind of typing these open and closed brackets on there. You'll notice that a lot of the elements end with the same element with a slash. So you have a beginning tag and you have an ending tag. So these are called tags. And the element, an HTML element, is the whole thing from the beginning tag to the end tag. So the tags label different pieces of content on the web page. So for example, like this is labeling this on the web page as a title. And so when the web browser sees this, it knows that this text here, more stories from around the world, is supposed to be the title of the page. we have a variety of different tags. We have header tags or heading tags. We have an H2 here or an H1 here. These mark different headings on there. Paragraph tags. There's these P's here, which mark that this is a paragraph on the in the text. And so web browser again has certain instructions that when it sees this P tag for the beginning and at the end of the paragraph, which on here, if I scroll way over to that, because this doesn't actually wrap around, you can see here's the P tag, closing P tag, way over here on the right by my my ear over here, my left ear. So that's marking the end of a paragraph. And so the browser knows that when it sees text inside those paragraph tags, this is how it should show it on your browser. Things like tables and etc. If you want a kind of a quick look at kind of the variety of different tags that are available on the kind of next to last page of your handout here, I have some HTML tag references. So the different kind of HTML tags that are commonly used when you're building something in a web page. So you can look at that as a reference. Let me go back to here. So the browsers do not display the tags. So when you're looking at this web page, you don't normally see this H2 or this this LI here. You don't see those there. They're there for the browser to understand how to display the text that's in there. So let's actually start. We can actually start working on some of our own HTML as well too here. So HTML documents are basically just a text document. As you can see, everything there was just text. Even like where the images are, there's actually lines of text that describe how to display that image. HTML documents can be created in a basic text editor like Notepad. So if every Windows computer comes with the basic Notepad. Let me just open it up here quickly and I can show you what Notepad is. Notepad is just this basic text editor here, where it has no formatting. There's no bold. There's no underline. There's nothing. There's no center text. There's none of the stuff that you normally see in a word processor. It's just it's a very basic place to enter text. And so that's where the markup language comes in. Is that because everything's just plain text? This is what's called plain text. Because everything's in plain text, you have to put in those little tags to kind of enhance the plain text, or tell the browser to enhance the plain text. Now for this class, we're going to be using what I call an enhanced Notepad editor called Notepad++. Let me go over here. So this here you should have downloaded from the website link here, the online-tech-classes. This is right up. Let me go back here. This is right above where the handout is. There's a link here to download and install Notepad++. So once it's downloaded and installed, Notepad++ is it's a simple text. It's a plain text editor, but it has tools built into it to make things like editing HTML or actually doing any sort of coding. This is actually where if I do any sort of like coding JavaScript or anything, I tend to do it in here as well too. Because it has some things to kind of just make it easier to read and to write it all out. So once you've installed, when you've installed it, like a fresh installation on there and such, there's a couple settings that we want to change in Notepad++. So install it, open it up. You should be looking, you might actually see like the first page that talks about like what's new in the updates. You can actually just click the little X on the tab up here, and that will close it and open up kind of just a new blank tab that we want to see here. Once you have that there, there's a couple settings that we want to turn on just to kind of make things a little easier when we're working with it there. The first we're going to do is we're going to come up here to the View menu, and you're going to come down and you're going to click on this word wrap option. And so what that will do is that will, when your text gets to the end of the line, it will come automatically down to the next line. Otherwise, it will just kind of keep running off to the side of the screen. And so you'll have to, if you don't have that on, you have to keep scrolling left and right to be able to see the start and the end. This keeps it all visible onto one screen here. So once again, you go up to View, Word Wrap to turn on Word Wrap. The other thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to come here to Language, and you can see there's this whole alphabet kind of coming down. We're going to come down to H, and we're going to choose HTML. And the reason for this here is we're telling Notepad++ that we are writing an HTML file. And so what it'll do is it will do some like special like formatting. And you'll see when we start working on it, it'll color the tags differently. It'll just kind of make things just a little bit look better and make your HTML text easier to read when it knows that it's showing you HTML. The final thing that I'm going to recommend doing is coming here to, actually, where is it? It's in, I need to find where the option is. Oh, settings, okay. Last thing you want to do is want to come here to settings, and you want to go to preferences. Preferences, there we go. And under auto completion, so over here there's a bunch of different preferences. Kind of ignore most of the stuff right now. We're not going to really change a lot of what's automatically set on there, but we're going to come down to auto completion, and you might notice it's going to say enable auto completion on each input, and it might be selected function and word completion here. I recommend just come up and just do function completion, or just turn this off completely. The autocomplete is a convenient feature in Notepad++, but it can also end up just being a little bit more distracting and more confusing when you're trying to learn the basics like we're doing here. Once you become more comfortable with how everything's working, in fact, I'm just going to turn it off. I'm going to turn it off on mine. And in the future, you can turn it back on once you get more comfortable with how HTML and CSS is being written and you understand what the auto-completion is offering you. But right now, I just feel that it's a distraction and it can just make things a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to just give you a couple minutes to go in and set up your Notepad++. If you have questions or problems installing it, let me know in the chat, and I will help you out with that there. Quickly, just went through quickly what I want you to set up again. Under View, come down, turn on Word Wrap. Under Language, come down to H and choose HTML. And then finally, in Settings, go to Preferences, go to Auto Completion in the Preferences, and turn off this Enable Auto Completion on each input. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll give you about 2 minutes for that. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions, so we are going to continue. So we're going to actually now start working on creating our HTML document that we're going to be doing to build a basic web page here. So every HTML document that shows up on the web, or should be that should show up on the web, must start with what they call a document type declaration. And so we do that there. We're going to click here on line 1. I'm going to open bracket. Sorry, a little hiccup there. The open bracket is Shift and then the key to the right of your M key on your keyboard. The close bracket is Shift, or the Shift comma will give you the open bracket. Shift period will give you the closing bracket. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open bracket and I'm going to type in exclamation point, and then in capital letters, doc type, lowercase again, HTML. And then I'm going to close the bracket. And so this is usually when you're creating an HTML document, this is going to be usually the very first line that you'll put onto your HTML page. And what this is this is an announcement to the web browser that that the document that it's looking at is an HTML document, so it knows how to interpret and present the document, the file that you're showing there. Then we're going to go down to a new line underneath, and I usually just kind of like to just put a little space between that there. So I go down to line 3. And then we're going to start off, and we're going to start the beginning of our HTML code with the HTML tag. So I'm going to open bracket, close, type in HTML, and close bracket. And you'll notice now that as soon as I did that there, the HTML here turns blue. That's because I told the language in Notepad++ that I'm doing HTML, so it knows this, it recognizes this as an HTML tag. Now, one thing to get familiar with when you're working with HTML is that in almost all situations, when you do a tag, there's going to also be a closing tag, and you close the tag by using the same thing but with a slash. So I do slash HTML, and I close the bracket. So now what happens is everything in between these two tags is marked as being HTML code. And so there's certain things like doing like this HTML when you're building your web page for the first time, building the structure of the web page. It's helpful to type these both at the same time so you don't forget to close the tags. One of the most common errors that people have when they're writing HTML and building an HTML web page is they forget to close tags, or they close tags incorrectly, and it just messes a lot of things up. So it gets into the habit of opening and closing the tags at the same time, and then you never forget about the closing. I'm going to go in and I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to put my cursor in between my two tags I have here. I'm going to hit enter and put them down into 2 lines. And so now what happens is everything that I build in my HTML page is going to be in between right now lines 3 and 4. Ultimately 4 will be way down at the bottom. This here will be not on line 4. It'll be way down at the bottom. But it will be, but everything I build right will be in between these 2 tags. So I'm going to go back up to line 3. I'm going to hit enter again to go to a new line. Now, every HTML page also consists of 2 main parts. There is the head. So we're going to mark the head area. And just like I did with the HTML, I'm going to close the head area. So everything that exists in the HTML header is going to be in between these 2 lines. Things that happen in the headers is you mark the title of the page. Most of the stuff that's in the head section of an HTML document does not show up in the document itself. It's kind of an area there for the web browser to read what's happening with the page. For things like web crawlers, like Google's web crawler, like search engines, when they index the page, they'll read this here. And so what you'll find usually in the header is you'll find things like title, which is about the only thing that's actually visible from the head in the actual version of the page. Then you'll have things like tags or metadata, which will kind of define what the page is. So when a search engine finds the page, it knows, okay, so this page is in English, and it's about, in this case, it's going to be about fairy tales. We would have those kind of meta tags in there. We're not going to be doing that because we're building a very basic web page here. The other thing that exists inside the head is usually things like links to other files, like CSS documents. So when we do our CSS later on, we're actually going to be putting a reference to that here in the head. So we'll come back to the head and we'll put that into here. So that's where you link to other files that are going to be connected to this HTML document. The head is also where you do things like your inclusion of libraries if you're going to be doing JavaScript, which is beyond the scope of this class. But if you're doing like JavaScript or PHP, you'll usually have something in the head here that will kind of link out so that the browser knows what instructions to use, what library of instructions to use for like JavaScript. So after my /head tag, I'm going to go down to a new line and I'm going to type in body in the brackets, and I'm going to do /body into the brackets. And so the body of the web page, the HTML document, is what you see in the web browser. So everything that we're going to see when we look at this in our web browser is going to be what's written in between these 2 lines here. So I'm going to give you about 1 minute or so. Go into your document. You want to put this doc type HTML at the top, and then you want to do HTML, head, close the head, body, close the body, close HTML. And this does show up on the PDF handout right here on the first page. This is what you're trying to match right here. And you'll notice that I indented, I tabbed in the head so that this is now like, it's kind of like as inset inside of HTML. And what that does, that just tells me that everything that's in between HTML, it kind of just makes it easier to read doing that indentation. You don't have to do it. I just recommend it to kind of make the code a lot more easy to understand to yourself as a reader or somebody else who's looking at it. The web browser doesn't care about these indentations. So take about a minute, go in and put that into your own document there. Okay, so has everybody gone in and created their basic structure for their HTML page here? So the first thing we're going to do with our web page here is we're going to go in and we're going to give the web page a title. So I'm going to come up here to the end of my head tag. I'm going to hit enter again and hit tab to indent in so that what I'm entering here is inside the head section. And I'm going to use the title tag. And for the title, I'm just going to put Ferguson Library HTML class. And then I'm going to close my title tag with /title. And so now what this does is this just basically tells the browser, hey, this is the title of the page that you're looking at. And where this will show up actually is this will show up actually on the tab in the browser there, or it used to show up actually at the top of the browser when we used to not have tabbed browsers. This would be at the title bar of the page. Now that we have tabs, this is what shows up in the tab there. And you'll see that when we actually start viewing this page after we kind of build a little bit more stuff in it. So once again, I'm going to give you just about a minute or so. Go in and put the title in. So you'll put the title in between the head and the /head tags. You'll open it up with the title tag, type the title that you want. In this case here, I'm recommending just do Ferguson Library HTML class, and then close the title tag with open bracket /title, close bracket. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, so everybody should have been able to put in the title here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start putting content into the body of our web page. So I'm going to come down here to the body. I'm going to hit enter to kind of create a blank line in between, and I'm going to hit tab in again just so I have it indented in between my body tags. And the first thing I'm going to enter here is going to enter in brackets, I'm going to enter an H1 tag. So HTML offers a it doesn't offer. There are a set of what they call heading tags that allow you to mark certain text as being headings on your web page. So it's kind of like organizing your text. And so the headings go from H1 down to H6. So there's 6 different levels of heading. A good way to think about this here is if you think about like an outline. If you write an outline, you start off with the Roman numeral 1. And then you have kind of an entry there, and then whatever's kind of like underneath that Roman numeral 1 you go over, and it's an A topic, that would be an H2. Underneath that there might be a subtopic of that subtopic, and that would be an H3. So you can kind of think about it organizing as like you have your topic, you have a subtopic, you have a sub-subtopic, you have a sub-sub-subtopic, all the way down to H6. Now, by default, the heading tag starting with H1. H1 is the largest text. It'll actually be the largest size and will usually maybe be a little bit bold. H2 is a little bit smaller. H3 tends to be about the size of your normal text on your web page. And then H4, 5, and 6 end up being smaller. So for novices in HTML, this is actually what I used to do when I was first learning HTML, is I would use the heading tags, H1 through H6, for font sizes. Now there's a much better way to do that there using CSS. and styles. So generally the heading is there to mark these as specific headings. So we're going to do an H1 tag, and I'm going to type in fairy tales around the world. And then I'm going to close my H1 tag with the /H1 at the end of the line there. Once again, these closing tags, this is where a lot of the common errors that happen in HTML occur. As people forget to close tags or they close things incorrectly. You'll also notice that I'm doing all of my tags in lowercase. This isn't necessary. You could do tags in capitals or in all caps. You could have a capital first letter and the lowercase the rest there. It's just standard practice to do all of your tags in lowercase. So they're not case sensitive, but the practice is to use lowercase. Let's see what we have here. So there are some, okay, we'll get into that. We'll talk about the elements that don't have closing tags. Okay, yep. So let's continue on with creating some content. So after the H1 line here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to type in H2. So I'm going to do a second level heading, and I'm going to call it stories. And we're going to close the H2 tag. And then I'm going to create an H3 tag. And we're going to call this The Fox and the Crow, which is the first story that we're going to have on our webpage. So this webpage is going to be just like a selection of fairy tales, text of fairy tales that we're going to put on there. Yep. And so I'm closing that there. So now you can almost see in some ways the structure of kind of the webpage, how these headings work. So heading 1 is our top level heading. It's the heading that's describing the entire page. Fairy Tales Around the World. In fact, I could have made the title up here, Fairy Tales Around the World, if I wanted to. And then what happens is under that there's going to be a section under the where the stories are going to exist. So you have the whole page being Fairy Tales Around the World, and then there's a section of that page which is going to be called Stories, and then a part of those stories is going to be The Fox and the Crow. And so you can see I have kind of descending importance of my heading tags on there. So this should actually be step 3 on your handout. I'm going to give you about, So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to go in and enter in your heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3. Let me know if you have questions. Okay, so if people are taking the time to go in and type in their heading lines here. So now what we're going to do actually is we're going to go and we're going to navigate. Remember the folder that you downloaded, that zipped file that you downloaded originally that has the resource files? Let me find it on here. Here we go. So we're going to go to that Intro to HTML and CSS folder. Hopefully you've decompressed it and opened up the folder here. And inside there is a file that says fairytales.txt. And so we're going to open that up. And opening it up, in mine, actually, it opens up in Notepad++ because I have it set to open up there. It might open up in Notepad for you. So let me actually open this up here so you can actually see how it opened up in Notepad. Desktop, Fairy Tales. And you notice that here, it seems, so in here, if it opens up in Notepad, you may have to go up into the format menu and turn on word wrap, just so it kind of wraps around and shows all of the text here on the same screen. So what this document is just the text of a couple different fairy tales that we're going to use on our website. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to take the first story here, The Fox and the Crow. Remember, we put that as the heading for heading 3 over in our document. And I'm going to copy from "It was a fine summer's day" all the way down to this last line, "The flatterer lives at the expense of those who will listen to him." I'm going to highlight all of this. I'm going to come up here to Edit, Copy, and I'm going to come back to my Notepad++ document here. And after H3 here, I'm going to create a new line, so I'm still within my body here, and I'm going to paste, edit, paste. I document this. So now the text of my story exists here inside my web page. Once I have the text of the story in here, I'm going to go to the start of each paragraph. I'm going to mark it as a paragraph using the P tag. So I'm going to do open bracket, P, close bracket. And then at the end of the paragraph, so this is the end of the first paragraph, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do /P. And so what this is doing is this is just telling the web browser, telling the HTML file that this is a paragraph and should be treated as kind of a singular unit together, so that it doesn't create like extra spaces between the lines, that all of this here is together as a singular text unit. And I'm going to do the same thing with each of my other paragraphs here. Oop. P. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same thing here with the third paragraph and close it here. And then the last line, "The flatterer lives at the expense of those who will listen to him," I am going to make that its own paragraph by itself. And then at the very end, when I'm done with I forgot to make that a /P. See, I'm already making a little typo here. And if you see me kind of looking around, I have my microphone right here, so I'm actually looking around at my keyboard around my microphone. If I move this, I can actually probably type a little easier. And then right here, after the last line, I'm going to hit Enter, create a new line down here. I'm going to put into brackets, I'm going to put a BR tag. So BR stands for break, and what it is, it's a way to put a line break into your web document. Because if you notice, there's a blank line here and there's a blank line here. The web browser ignores those blank lines. The web browser, for the most part, ignores what's called white space. So if I go in here and at the start of so like this white space here at the start of this here where I've tabbed in, it ignores this. This doesn't matter to the web browser. This has nothing to do. All that this does is this makes it easier for me to read as a non-computer user, or as a non-computer. As a human reader, by having this extra space here, kind of just makes the code easier to read, and having these blank lines in here make the text easier to read. But without these P tags here, all of this would kind of run together, would be squished together as a single text, and it would ignore these blank lines in between. So in order to put a blank line between your text and other text, you have to put this BR tag. This tells, put a line break, put a break, a blank space, or if you put it at the end of the line, it's like, okay, go down to the next line on there. So after we do that BR tag, I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to a new line. I'm going to do a new H3 tag, just like I did up here with the fox and the crow. And I'm going to type in the woodsman and the crane and close the H3 tag. And then after this here, if I go back to my fairytales.txt file, there's the second story here. So I'm going to copy and paste this into my HTML document. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to go do this. This is actually step 3 on your handout. So if we go look at the handout here, and you're following along, we're down here at step 3. We've done this part here on page 1. Go down to page 2, and we're doing this section right here. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will answer them while I'm working on getting my web page or my HTML document here, getting the new story put into there. So again, about 5 minutes. Just a couple more minutes. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, so how's everybody getting along on this here? I can give about another minute before we continue. Once you're all set with putting in the 2 stories and marking each paragraph with the paragraph tag, we're going to, at this point, we have created a basic text-only web page. Congratulations. So what we're going to do is we're going to go take a look to see how this looks and see all kind of the different work that we've done. So what we're going to do is, once you've put in the second story and you've gone in and you've marked all the different paragraphs and the headings, we're going to come up here to File, I'm going to go down to Save As. And then the easiest thing to do is browse to wherever you downloaded the... actually, what you need to do is you need to go to where you downloaded the Intro to HTML and CSS folder. So let me find where it is on my computer here. So Intro to HTML and CSS. And in this folder here that has the other files, it has banner.jpg, it has the fairytales.txt. There's another folder in there called images. Don't worry about that right now. In here, we're going to call this index.html. So by default, on a web page or on a website, the front page or the home page of that website by default is named index.html. So this is where if you were to put this web page onto your web space, like to put it up onto a website on the internet, there would be a folder that you would upload this file to. And you would go to your domain name. So if somebody went to fergusonlibrary.org, the web browser, when it goes to fergusonlibrary.org, it's looking for an index.html file. So without anything, if you have index or fergusonlibrary.org/, you can put another file after that slash. But if you're just at what they call the top level domain, fergusonlibrary.org, it's looking for an index file, an index.html. So that's always kind of your first page. You're going to go and you're going to name it index.html. Now you'll notice that there are a lot of pages out there that are just called index.htm or other files. There is no difference between HTM and HTML when it comes to files there. It's just that HTM is when was used at a time when Windows tended to only use a 3-letter extension on there. So there was no room to put the L. So they just used HTM. Now we can put HTML and it kind of makes sure everything kind of makes sense. So once again, what you're going to do is you're going to go to File, Save As. You're going to browse to your Intro to HTML and CSS folder that you downloaded from the online tech classes. And in this top part here, where all these the banner and the fairytales.txt and the stories2.html, in this folder here, don't do the images folder. In this one here, save it as index.html. So I'm going to click Save. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that folder. So I'm going to go here, and you can see now I have index.html that I saved right here. And I'm going to double click on this. And what this is going to do is this is going to open up in my web browser and show the basic text-only page that I've created here. So here's my H1. You can see now, you can see the difference between an H1 tag here and the H2 tag is mainly a thing of size. H1 is the largest text on here. H2 is a little smaller. H3 is a little smaller than H2, but it is larger than our normal paragraph text here. And so now you can see how I had things broken up. So we have our H1, Fairy Tales Around the World, talking about the whole page. We have the stories, talking about the stories coming underneath here. And then we have The Fox and the Crow with my H3 tag, which is just the title for this story right here. And now you can see I have those blank lines in between because that's what the paragraph tags set aside each of these different paragraphs. And then there's a line break here, which is that BR that I put in. And then here's my next story with the individual paragraphs. If I right click here and go to View Page Source, you'll see here's the exact code that I just wrote in Notepad++. I can't edit it here, but I can see it. So there's that doctype.html, there's the head, and if you notice up here in the tab up on the top up here, it says Ferguson Library HTML class. So that's that title that I entered in there. So when I work with HTML, what I like to do is after I have something basic like this here in place, where I can actually go and view it in the web browser, is I will leave this open in the web browser here. Because now as I start making changes to my HTML document, I can make changes, save the file, and then I come here, I click my refresh button right up here. So there's a refresh button. It's this little circle. It might also be at the end of your address bar. So there might be like a refresh at the end of the address bar here. Or you can hit the F5 keyboard. So F as in Frank, 5 on your keyboard, and what that'll do is that'll reload the page. So if you make any changes in your in Notepad++, you save it, come back to your web browser and reload the page, and it will show the changes that you made. So it makes a really easy way to go make a change and then go see what it looks like. So moving on, right now we have created a pretty basic kind of text-only web page there. It's not what we're used to seeing on the World Wide Web today. This might have been fine about 25 years ago. This might have been okay about 25 years ago, but we've gotten used to things. We've gotten used to seeing pictures and colors and kind of other things that's going on here. So what we're going to do now is also the other part about the World Wide Web is being able to link to other pages. That's actually the whole idea behind the World Wide Web initially, was the whole hyperlinks. So if you remember, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. That whole hyper idea, hyperlink, linking out and linking different pages like this together. So the first thing we're going to do actually is we're going to credit these stories from the source that I got them from by putting a link. So there's going to be a link that we're going to put at the bottom of each of these stories here that's going to link out to the original source where I found these stories on the internet. So we're going to go back to Notepad++ and our document that we're writing here. And I'm going to come down here to the end of my first line of the first story. So it was the moral here: the flatterer lives at the expense of those who will listen to him. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to hit enter, go down to a new line underneath. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to create a new paragraph using p tags. So just like we did before, get my keyboard out of the way, or my microphone out of the way. P tags. So open and close a paragraph, and in between is I'm going to put the code for inserting in hyperlink. So the way this works actually is we open a bracket and we start off with the letter A. So the letter A stands for anchor. So this is what they call an anchor tag. And what it is that it's kind of like, if you think about a hyperlink being like a set of like lines or cables connecting different web pages on the internet. Think of it as like a spider web where you have the different lines connecting to different points on the internet. Each of those different points in a spider web are different web pages on the World Wide Web. And in order for that line to get connected, that cable to get connected from one point to another, you have to anchor it on both ends. So you have what they call an anchor link or an A tag. Now, with the A tag, we have to add an attribute to tell what type of anchor it is. And in this case, the attribute, what they call an attribute, is the href. And what that basically says is that's a hyper reference or a hyperlink reference, which means that we're linking out to another place out onto the internet. And so what happens is we have our anchor. So the A here is our anchor part. And then we have our attribute, which is this href. And what you do with attributes is you type it in, and then it's followed by an equals sign. So the attribute is href, the HTML reference, equals, and then in quotes, we put what that attribute equals. In this case, for link, it equals actually the address that we're going to. So the address here actually is going to be... actually, we don't have to try to remember it. I have it here in Fairy Tale, our text document where we got our text. You'll notice, like right up at the top above the story is this HTTP line, and so this is the address for the for where they got these stories from. So I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to copy it, edit, copy. I'm going to come over here, and after the quote, I'm going to go in and I'm going to paste it. I'm going to go edit, paste, and you can see now it puts the address there, and then I'm going to close it with a closing quote. And then I'm going to do a closing bracket here. And so actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just pull this out here just a bit. I'm going to highlight this so we can look at exactly what we're looking at here. So this here is the opening tag for an anchor tag, that's creating a hyperlink. If you look at it compared to, say, the P tag over here, so you have the opening bracket and you have the opening bracket here, and then you have the tag indicator. So here we have P for paragraph, here we have A for anchor. And then we have a closing bracket here on the P tag. Here's that closing bracket over here for the A tag. So all of that is the tag. It's just that for the anchor tag here, for this here, we've added this href attribute where we're telling the anchor what to point at. So here's the anchor on our page here, and then it's telling, okay, the destination, the other side of the anchor is at this address here. So connect, make a link between this page that we're writing here and the page that the address that I just put into there. Over time, it's just start understanding by rote that in order to do a hyperlink like this here, it's just href equals the address bracket, and then after this closing bracket here, you can put whatever text that you want there. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to put some text, story copied from it came from a webpage called Fairy Tales of the World. These are all public domains, so there's no copyright issues with what we're doing here. And so now what happens is this text that I'm typing here, this story copied from Fairy Tales of the World, is what will show up as the hyperlink on my web page. This will be that blue underlined text that shows up on my web page, is the text that I entered here. You can also do things like you can put an image here and make the image link. So you know how sometimes you can click on like a picture on a web page and it will take you off to another web page or do a link and do something on there and such. I'll be showing how to insert images in a second, but inserting an image, you could do the image code right here and make that image the hyperlink that goes to here. Once I'm done writing the text, that's going to be the text of the link, what they call the text link. I'm going to do a /a in brackets afterwards. And what this is doing, this is now closing the anchor tag. So remember again when I talked about how the element is everything from the opening tag to the closing tag. So here we have our anchor element. We have the opening tag, including an attribute that points to the address that we want to go to. So this href attribute. Then we have the text that's going to enter there, and then we close it all with the /a. If I forget this /a, it's going to make everything afterwards part of the link, which I don't want to have happen. So what did this look like? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what this looks like, and then I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to go in and do this link onto your own document, and we're also going to do it for the woodsman and the crane down here as well too. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to save this. I'm going to click my save icon on the top left. And so now this is saved. I'm going to go back to my web browser and view this here, and I'm going to refresh my page. I'm going to hit F5 on my keyboard and refresh it, and so there you go. There's my hyperlink there, the blue underlined text. Here's the words that I wrote there, story copied from Fairy Tales of the World. You don't see the address before or after, but if I put my mouse over it and you look down in the bottom corner, actually, there we go. Make sure I'm pointing the right way. Way down in the bottom corner there, you'll see the address, the HTTP, the fairytalesoftheworld.com/quickread/the Fox and the Crow, the address that it's going to go to. And if I click on this now, it will take me to that web page. So I'm going to just go back and go there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my HTML document here. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes. Go into your own document, and we're going to add in, and this is actually step 6 on your handout too. So if you're following along and you want to kind of see the instructions, look at step 6, and it'll kind of walk you through each of these different steps there. If you have questions, let me know in the chat. So you're going to do the link at the bottom of the Fox and the Crow, and at the bottom of the Woodsman and the Crane. And the address for both of those is available in the fairytales.txt file, right above the text, underneath the title. There's a line right underneath the title of each of the stories. And so once you put in those link texts, just save it, go back to your web browser where you had the page loaded, and refresh it to kind of see those changes. Give you about another minute to do this here. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so now that we've put in some hyperlinks to kind of credit the source of the stories, let's kind of make our page a little bit prettier by putting in some images. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back up to the top of our document, and we're going to put an image at the top of the page, and then we're going to put an image for each of the different stories to kind of illustrate the stories a bit. So what we're going to do is right here above our H1 line where we had fairy tales around the world, I'm going to go to the beginning of the line, I'm going to hit enter and move back up into that blank line that I just created, and I'm going to insert the code to call an image. And so this here will be we open bracket and we type img. So img is the image tag. Unlike the heading or the paragraph tags or our anchor tags, the image tag does not have a closing tag. There is no /img. It's just img here. And then what happens is then we have to give an attribute. So just like we did with the anchor tag where we had the href attribute there, so this href attribute here on our text, we're going to have to do what they call a source, src attribute, which is telling, okay, at this point here, we're showing an image, img. The source of that image is, so here's the attribute, equals, and then in quotes, just like we did here. So you can see that same, we have the attribute name, we have equals, and then we're going to have information in quotes. I'm going to put banner.jpg. Close quotes, close brackets. That's all that we need here for this image here. And what this is referencing now is this is actually referencing, if I go and look at my folder here, this is referencing this banner.jpg folder. And what happens is because this banner.jpg file here lives in the same folder as my index.html, I don't have to give it any other directions. I just have to tell it to open up to show banner.jpg, whatever file is named banner.jpg in that folder, this is what it's going to show on the web page. So what does that look like? I'm going to save my document again. Let's go look back to my web browser and let me refresh. And so now you can see now it's put this picture right up here at the top. And so this is that banner.jpg. And all that, in order to get that to show up there, all I did was enter in this one simple line here. So we have image source equals and then the file name. So what we're going to do now is we're also going to put in some pictures for each of our different stories. So after the Fox and the Crow, okay, so after stories, we're going to put actually the image above the title here. I'm going to go down, I'm going to put a break because I want to have a little bit of space between my stories heading here and where the picture shows up. So I'm going to put a BR for a break. And now here I'm going to do img, just like I started off with my other image up here before, src equals, so source equals, and now the file that I want to show here, the picture that I want to show here is not, let me go back here, is not in this folder here. Instead, it's actually in this images folder. So if I go up here to images, you can see I actually have a Fox Crow image in here. And it's called foxcrow.jpg. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to come in and I'm going to put in images slash foxcrow.jpg and in close quotes, close bracket. And so what this is now saying is this is saying go to the images folder that's in the same place as index.html, and inside there open up the file or show the file that's named foxcrow.jpg. Now it's really important, because you're typing in these file names, you make sure that you have the entire file name, the dot, and then the full extension, JPG. You can't just have foxcrow, because it won't know what to do with that there. It won't find, because there's no file in there called foxcrow. It's actually foxcrow.jpg or JPEG. So you need to have that full file name that's on there. And then we're going to go down to the woodsman and the crane, and underneath this break, I'm going to go in and do a new line. I'm going to put in another image here. Image source equals images, because it's also in the images there, and I think it's called crane. Let me see what I called it. Yep, crane.jpg. Close quotes, close bracket. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes. Go and do this on your own, in your own file. Enter in the 3 different images there. So above Fairy Tales Around the World, this H1 Fairy Tales Around the World, you're going to do image src equals, and then in quotes, banner.jpg, close bracket, remember that. In between stories and the fox and the crow, those 2 lines there, put a line break, and then on the next line put in image source equals images slash foxcrow.jpg, close quote, close bracket. And then right here, right above the woodsman and the crane, in the line above there, put in image source equals images slash crane.jpg. Then save your file, take about 3 minutes, and then we'll continue on from there. If you want, save your file, and then you can go to your web browser and refresh it and see how it looks also. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so have we entered in the images into those 3 different places there? Now, if we go and look at our web browser, the banner looks pretty good there. There's the fox crow, that looks pretty good. The crane picture is really big. It's almost too large for this web page. In fact, it's overly large even on my large screen here. So what we're going to do is we're going to be able to adjust the size of that there. Now, you could go in and you could adjust the size in your image editor. So you can go open it up in like Photoshop or Paint and make the picture smaller, save it, and put it onto there. But there are ways, but sometimes it's best to keep the image in its original size, because if you want to be able to do different things with it, you can shrink a picture smaller, but once a picture is smaller, you can't make it larger without it getting blurry or pixelated on the World Wide Web. So sometimes it's best to keep things at a full size and use HTML to display it at a smaller size. So let's take a look at how we do that there. So we're going to come down here, and so here's my line where I talk about where I've put in images/crane.jpg. I put the crane image into there. So after this quote here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put a new attribute for this image. And so in this attribute here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it, I'm going to give it a width attribute. I'm going to say width equals, and in brackets I'm going to say 300. And what I'm saying is that the width should only be 300 pixels wide. And so what it's going to do now is it's going to shrink the picture so that it's only 300 pixels wide. So I'm going to save this, and we're going to go back to my browser, and I'm going to refresh again. And now you can see now the picture is much smaller. It fits into the space that we've created on our web page a lot better than it did before. And if I actually went in and measured this here, it would be 300 pixels wide. So now you'll notice now that, for example, like this picture now is significantly smaller than our Fox and the Crow. It makes the Fox and the Crow picture here kind of stand out, that it doesn't quite fit properly on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the Fox and the Crow to a height of 200 to kind of make it sure everything kind of matches up. And then we're going to also make our banner image up here a width of 400. So this variety of things that we're going to do, we're going to come back to here. I'm going to come up to images Fox Crow. I'm going to do a height equals, who's going to make the height 200 in brackets. So you can see height is another attribute that we can give to images. You can give width, you can give height. And then right up here under banner, I'm going to give this a width of 400. So I'm going to give you about, let's just do 1 minute because it's just a quick couple things there and such, is that for the banner image, give it a width equals, and then quotes, put 400 to say 400 pixels. For the Fox Crow image, give that a height of 200 pixels. And for the crane, go give it the width of 300 pixels there. And then save your file and go to your browser and refresh to kind of see how it's changed all the images there. So now everything kind of flows a little bit better onto our document. I'll give you about a minute to work on that there. Oops. Okay, so have you gone in and added in the height and widths for these files here? So that's it. This is the HTML part. We've made our basic HTML page with some images and some links going on there. So now we're ready to kind of start looking to see what CSS can do. So you can see HTML is pretty basic. A lot of things is those HTML elements and knowing what different HTML elements do. I realized I forgot one at the very beginning that we're going to do. So for the first story, The Fox and the Crow, at the very last line, the flatterer lives at the expense of those who listen to him, is the moral of the story. It's a fable that has a moral. And we want to make this text stand out from the rest of the text a little bit because, hey, this is the moral. So what I'm going to do is before, after the P tag, but before the sentence starts, I'm going to go in and I'm going to enter an EM, or what they call an emphasis tag. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to enter in /EM to mark the end of it. And so what this is what they call nested tags. So you can nest tags inside of each other. So you can have the start of one tag and then have something go on and have tags inside of that all the way down. The thing to keep in mind is that if you nest tag, so here I've started with one tag and then I had a second tag, is that I have to close them in reverse order. So I can't have /p here and then /m. It would actually break how this page would display if I did that there. So you always have to go from like your inside out. So so whatever your last in is going to be your first out here. To kind of use some of these common kind of ways of describing this here. So because my second tag here was the EM tag, my first tag with closing has to be the closing EM tag, and then I can close my paragraph. So if you're going to nest tags, just remember to close them in the reverse order that you open them up with. I'm going to save, and we're going to go see what I did on the page here. Refresh, and you actually it doesn't make it makes it italicized. You can see now it's italicized, the line there, so it kind of stands out from the rest of the text because that's the moral. The final thing that we're going to do with our HTML document before we move on to CSS is we're going to go in and we're going to put in some little bit of structural things to make our CSS a little bit easier to do. Actually, hold on. I completely missed a whole other section of the HTML document. Haha! I'm not even following my own exercises. We still have another major section to do. I have shown how to do a link to another web page. But there are ways to link to different parts on the same web page. And so we're going to do that there by building a table of contents for our page here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do a basic table of contents. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here where I had fairy tales around the world. At the end of H1, I'm going to hit here. I'm going to go down to a new line, and I'm going to enter in a new H2 tag, and I'm just going to write table of contents. And then close H2. So now you can see, actually, once again, that kind of separation, that section, that organization that we've done on the web page before, with H1 being our most important tag, covering the entire page. H2 being kind of section headings. And so now we have two different sections on our page. We're going to have a table of contents section, and we're going to have a stories section. And then we have our H3 down here, which is the story itself. So after I enter my table of contents heading, I'm going to go down, and we're going to use HTML allows us to create what they call lists. And you can create two different kinds of lists in HTML. They have an unordered list, which is a bulleted list. So an unordered means that there's no ordering, there's no numbering or anything on there, such it uses bullets, like little round dots, to define the different points on the list. And then there's an ordered list. And the ordered list is a numbered list, so it'll go 1, 2, 3, so on. For our table of contents here, we're going to do an unordered list. And so we start that with the UL tag. So UL stands for unordered list. UNORDERD, unordered list. So we start off the list with UL, saying we're telling now the browser, hey, we're going to be showing a list here. I'm going to go down to a new line, and just like I did before with the head and the bodies, as I'm tabbing in so that everything that's in the list is going to be kind of a little bit to the right. It's going to be indented in underneath the UL tag here. Now you set up each list item by using the LI tag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up, I'm going to do LI, and so LI stands for list item. And so now I'm going to do, the first story that we have there is the fox and the crow. And now I'm going to close that list item with /li. I'm going to go down to a new line. I'm going to do a new list item, and it's going to be the woodsman and the crane. And then I'm going to close that list item there. It's LI, not I, LI. So now I have my two little list items, and then I'm going to go down and I'm going to close. Actually, we're going to actually do one more LI, and we're going to do more stories, because we're going to link out to a page that I've created that has more stories on it. And I'm going to go down and I'm going to close my unordered list with /ul. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. Go in and create the underneath Fairy Tales of the World, create an H2 line that says table of contents. Then underneath, create an unordered list using the UL tag. So open and close it with UL and then /UL, and then create 3 list items: LI, the fox and the crow, the woodsman and the crane, and then more stories. About 2 minutes to do that there. Let me know if you have any questions, and then we'll look at how to make these actually link to the different places on the page. All right, so I just wanted to kind of show here, this is kind of what that table here kind of, or that list kind of created there. So you can see here's my H2, same size as my stories down here. And then here's each of my little points that I've kind of created, each of those little list items. You'll notice right now they aren't linked. So if I click on them, they don't do anything. They're just text. So what do we do to make them actually links? So we use the anchor tags that we had before. Remember the anchor tags? So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to go back into my Notepad++. I'm going to go back here to the start of the line where I said the fox and the crow in this list item here. And right in between my list opening tag and I'm going to go put in an anchor tag. A href, or href, I always say href, but it's actually href, equals, and then in brackets, I'm going to put pound fox. So the hashtag sign, or pound sign, fox, and then close brackets, close quotes, close bracket, and then right here again, because I have a nested tag, I have the A nested inside the list, I have to have close the A before I close the list item. So we're going to do /A there. And so what the hashtag here represents is what it's called. Let me find, right now, for the life of me, my mind is not remembering exactly what the term of that is. Oh, come on. It's actually marking it as an ID. That's what it is. So it's marking the idea that there is an ID. So what it's telling is anchor this section here, make this a link that then goes to wherever I've ID'd as fox. So what I need to do now is I need to actually mark something as an ID fox. So I'm going to come down here to where I have my title for the fox and the crow, and in this H3 tag, inside the tag, so I have H3, and then in between the 3 and the closing bracket here, I'm going to introduce a new attribute. I'm going to go in, I'm going to do ID equals fox. I think that's right. Is that? Oh, fox in quotes. And so now what I've done now is I've ID'd this header 3 line here as fox. So now when this link here, when I click on this here, it's going to look on the page and it's going to find some place that has an ID of fox, and it's going to then jump down to that part of the page. I'm going to do the same thing up here with the woodsman and the crane. I'm going to do a href equals, and what did I call this one here? I'm going to call it woodsman. Woodsman, close bracket, close my A tag, And then down here in my title line for the Woodsman and the Crane, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put ID equals Woodsman. So now when I click this link here, it will then go find the place that I've ID'd as Woodsman. The final thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give a few minutes to kind of work for you to work on this here, is we're going to come over here to more stories, and we're just going to do a standard hypertext link. So href equals, and what did I call this? I called it, oh, wrong place. Stories2. So we're going to do stories2 .html. And close the anchor. And so what this is doing now is that this is going out. So what this tells it to do is link out to a file named stories2.html. You notice I don't have the http:// before it. I don't have any other folder. It just goes there, so it's going to look in the same place that index.html exists. Just like we did with the pictures. With this picture here, this is looking for banner.jpg in the same place that index.html exists. This is going to look for stories2.html in the same place and link to that story. So I'm going to give you about, let's say about 3 minutes. Go and do that yourself, and then we'll come back and we have one final thing we have to do with our HTML before we start looking at CSS. And it looks like we're going to run probably a little late, but we'll make sure I cover everything in this class here. I don't have anywhere else to go. Okay, so have we entered in our internal links onto the table of contents there, and links down to the different sections? Now, before we move on to CSS, as I mentioned before, before I remembered that I had to do the table of contents thing here. There are a few different structural things that we want to do onto our HTML to make working with CSS easier. So what we're going to do actually is before the h2 tag here of table of contents, I'm going to go in and I'm going to enter in a div tag. So in brackets, I'm going to put div. And I'm going to mark this here at the end of the list here. I'm going to do /div. And what div is just a division. It's a division tag that what it does is it just kind of collects a section of your web page, your text together into the same area. Or it basically says that these here are all considered to be part, like a single unit together. So the table of contents and the different items in the table of contents, they're all like a single unit. And then I'm going to do a div tag around each of the stories. So right before the image, the fox and the crow here, I'm going to do a div, and I'm going to close it here after the link that I did story copied from Tales of the World. I'm going to do a close div tag. So now what happens is everything from here all the way down to here, all of this stuff here is viewed in the HTML document as a single unit, a single division. And then we're going to go down and we're going to do the same thing for the woodsman and the crane. So div, and going to come down and do div. Now, by itself, the div tags do not change anything. They don't make the page look any different. They just by putting them in, all they are is like an internal kind of division div of the web page, so that you kind of section out the web page. And it's useful when you're building a web page to kind of think of things as those individual pieces, that just like different blocks that you're kind of assembling together, because you can do different styling things, different formatting onto those individual divisions, onto those individual divs. With that said, I'm now going to save this. And we're going to go take a look to see what our web page, our finished HTML web page, looks like right now. So I've gone back to my web browser. I'm going to refresh this here. And so now you can see I have my banner, I have my title, I have my table of contents here. And if I click on each of these links, this jumps down to the fox and the crow. If I come up and click on the woodsman and the crane, it jumps down and shows me that story there. You'll notice that there isn't anything, those divs that I put in, they're not showing up. It's all a hidden background code. If I go click on more stories, this will go to a second web page where we have a table of contents, we have our stories, and a couple more stories to kind of include with the first one. And I can always go back to my first stories here by clicking previous stories. The main reason I have that second page there is that when we start working with CSS, we can see how by editing one CSS file, we can actually make changes on both pages. So with that said, let's move on to the second part of this class. And we are definitely going to be running late for this, but I want to make sure that we cover everything we need to. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So the important part of that term is what they call style sheets. It used to be that when you created an HTML document, you would do all of the formatting and the design of the document in that HTML document. So you wanted to make text red, you would have a place that you would mark it as red. If you want to make your background color a different color than white, you would have HTML background code that you would go in and you would type background. I can't even remember what the HTML code for background was, but you would change it using HTML. The downside of this here is that if you have, I mean, it's fine. We only have 2 web pages here, or we've only been working on 1 web page. We have a second one. If I wanted to make those changes and I wanted to make those changes match on both of the pages, I just have to go to each page code and enter that in. Now think about larger websites that are going to have 15, 30, 200 web pages. If I wanted to change the design or update the design of the web pages, if I did it through HTML, I would have to go to every single individual page and make the same changes in there. I'd have to change the HTML code on every single page. So if I wanted to change the background of my entire website from white to blue, I'd have to go to all the individual pages and change the HTML code that says which color it is. Instead, what I can do is I can create a style sheet. And what the style sheet says is, hey, this is the styles. These are the colors and the fonts and the formatting that you should do to display this page. If you remember when I started off the class, I said that the HTML tags basically define the text, or define what text is for the browser. So if I go and look at what I've written here, this H1 here for Fairy Tales Around the World, this is telling the browser that this is a heading 1. Now the browser has its own definition of what a heading 1 looks like. In this case, it has the default definition. This is what a heading 1 looks like. It's this size. it's this font, it's this color. Using style sheets, I can give the browser instructions on how an H1 tag looks. I can say, instead of it being black and this size and this color and this font, I can say it can be red instead or blue instead. And then what happens is that every web page that uses that same style sheet, the H1 tag will look the same. You can style how links look. So a link by default shows up. I mean, here mine are showing up as purple because I've clicked and visited these links. If I go here to more stories, you can see by default a hyperlink is this blue underlined text. I can in my CSS, I can rewrite what a link looks like. I can make it a different color. I could make it black that's not underlined so it looks like the rest of the text. I don't recommend doing that because then people don't know that it's a link to click on. You want to be able to have the link stand out. In this case, you can see one's blue because I haven't clicked on it yet. The other one's purple because I visited that page. So there's a difference between a visited link and an unvisited link. And I can, again, tell the difference. If I wanted the visited links to be bright red, I can use a CSS page to define that in there. And because the CSS page, I can actually attach it to both of these web pages. So whether it's my front page here, my index.html, or the more stories here, I can attach it to both of these pages so I can change one document and it will change in both places. So enough explanation, let's actually go in and see how this actually works. So as I mentioned, our page here, it's done. Everything's there, but it's kind of plain. So now we're going to look at how to design this here using CSS. So we're going to go back to Notepad++, and I'm going to come up and go to File, New. And one of the things I like about Notepad++ is that Notepad++ does like what a web browser does. It works in tabs, so I can easily go back to my index page, or I can go to this new document that I'm creating here. So I'm going to open up a brand new document. I'm not going to put anything in this document yet. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go up and I'm going to save it. So I'm going to save this blank document, File, Save As, and we're going to save it as Fairy Tale. So we're going to save it in my Intro to HTML and CSS folder. So that same folder that I've been working with the whole time. And we're going to just save it as fairytales.css. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And so this tells Windows and Notepad++ that, hey, this is a CSS file. And also tell the web browser, this is a CSS file. So I'm going to click Save. And so now it's saved. I'm not going to do anything else with it right now. We're just going to save it as CSS, and I'm going to go back to my index.html file. Now, if you remember when I started off the class and we were creating the structure of our web page, and we did our head and our body, and in our head, we just put our title there. In the head is also where you put links to other documents that are related to the web page, including style sheets. So what I'm going to do is underneath title, so I'm going to come up here to title, and underneath the title, I'm going to link this index.html page to the CSS document I just created. So we're going to do that by using the link tag in the head section. So we're going to do link. And so the link has several different parts that you have to include in order to make it link to a CSS document. So first part is you have your link tag saying this is a link. And then you have to use the rel attribute. We're dealing with the attribute. The rel is the relationship. So you're telling what is the relationship of this file to the one that we're writing right now. And so we're going to tell it. So rel, just like all the other attributes, you name equals, and then in quotes you fill in the information. We're going to put style sheet. So what we're doing now is we're telling that the link that we're linking here is a style sheet. This is the relationship between this document and the one that we're linking. Then you have to do a type attribute, and over time you just realize this is just do this by rote. This is what you have to do in order to write out this link tag. You have to write these different aspects. So type is it's a text document that is a CSS document. So text/CSS. So what it does is when it finds the file that we're going to link to, it says, okay, it's going to be expecting a text document that's going to read as a CSS file. And then finally, we put the href, the thing that we've been using all before with all of our links, the hyper reference, href equals, and I'm going to call fairytale.css. Just that same name, and it has to be, make sure that your case, so if you put capitals here, make sure you put capitals here. The case has to be the same. Remember the .css. Close it with quotes, and then close bracket. And that is our link there. So now what happens is that I save this. This will now link this index.html to my blank CSS page. Save. Right now there isn't much for. I'm not going to go look at it in the browser because it hasn't changed anything in the browser itself. So this line here, this link out to the style sheet here, this is necessary on every page that you style sheet for. I've already put this line on stories2.html, so it's already on this HTML page. So now what happens is both stories2.html and our index.html here are linked to that same style sheet. So whatever changes on the style sheet should, in theory, affect both pages. Okay, so now what we're gonna do now, we are going to go back to fairytales.css. And the reason why we wanted to save our index here after adding this here now is that means that when we start making changes in the CSS file, we'll be able to see it in the browser. So I'm going to go back to my fairytales.css document that's here. So a CSS is written a little bit differently than HTML. Let me just kind of cover up a little bit of my notes here. So CSS is a language that describes the style of an HTML, tells how HTML elements should be displayed in the browser. Kind of gone over that. A CSS rule set. So what we're doing is we're writing the CSS rule set here for our web pages. It consists of a selector and a declaration block. So the selector is the HTML tag, the HTML element that you want to change or style. So you can choose any HTML element. You can choose our anchor elements, our A tags, P tags. So each of our paragraphs that we've done before, you can define what font they use, what color text they use, size they are, background color, the font color. You can the font that you can change all of those different kind of to them all at once in here. So almost any HTML element can be styled as you like. The declaration block. So you choose the element, that's your selector, and then you do a declaration block, and that's where you write out the CSS properties, what the value is. So I'm going to write out the first thing here and kind of point out these different parts. So the first thing that we want to do on our web page, we want to change the background color. We want to go from that boring white to something a little bit more interesting. So what we're ultimately going to be changing, if we go back to my HTML document here and such, is we're actually going to be changing the whole body of our document there. So what I'm going to be doing is my HTML element that I'm going to be changing is that I'm going to be styling in my CSS document is this body element. So that's my selector. And I'm over here in my CSS document, I'm just going to type body. So the body is this is the selector. So remember, we have a selector and then we have a declaration block. So the selector that we're working with, body, and now I create my declaration block by using the brackets. So this is shift, and it's the bracket key, which is kind of on the second row of your keyboard, right underneath like the minus or equals key generally on your keyboard. It's usually the third key over from, if you have backspace, you go down, you'll see the slash, the backslash key, and then you'll see the brackets on the next two keys. So we want the shift open brackets, the curly brackets here. And then what I like to do, again, I could write everything right here onto the same line. I tend to like to go down to a new line, and you can see how it automatically kind of indents in underneath here. This is one of the nice things about Notepad++. Notepad++ knows I'm writing a CSS document because I've named it cs.css. So now it's going to kind of do coloration and kind of formatting for CS documents to make them easier to read. And again, this is easier for you to read in person, not necessarily easier for a computer to read. So in there, now I'm going to, in the body, I'm going to write in kind of the different CSS styles that I want to change. So the that I want to change my body here is I want to change the background color. And there's a whole list of these different properties, CSS properties. So background color here, CSS property, huge list of these. And where you can kind of find a good reference to kind of find them there is if you look at the handout here, down at the very end, I actually have some property references here. So here's background color, specifies the background color of an element. Right down at the bottom, I have this link here to www.w3schools.com. This is probably like the best places to get references for HTML and CSS. So they actually have tutorials. So it's a good place to go to continue practicing HTML and CSS. In fact, a lot of these, in fact, I spent a lot of time when I was designing this class there, looking at how they walk through the tutorials on TVs. But it also has a reference dictionary for a variety of different. So I only have a few CSS properties here. There are hundreds of these out that they're all referenced at this link. So it's kind of really the place to go in your learning, and also as you're working with things, working and writing in HTML and CSS, then go kind of look. I can't remember what the background color, how to change the background color CSS is. And go there and you'll find that it's the background color style property there. Go back here, I'm going to do background color, and then I have to put a colon. The colon says, okay, so here's the property changing, and then after the colon we put the value that we're changing it. And in this case we're going to do a hashtag sign 2F004F. So what this set of 6 letters here is, 6 plus the hashtag, is this is what they call a hex code. Hex codes are codes that define different colors on the World Wide Web. I could do something as simple as I could write red, blue, purple, yellow here. I actually put and those would go to a specific red, blue, yellow, or purple. But if I wanted to do a specific color, I could go find the specific color that I want to use, and I could look up what the hex code for that color is. And so the hex code actually it's actually 3 different parts. You have the red, blue, and the green, or actually red, green, RGB. So this is the red value of the color. This is the green value of the color, blue. And so because you can see, I actually have, and these letters, these numbers go from 0 to F. So it's a hexadecimal or 16 numbered system. So you have 0 through 9, that's your first 10 numbers, and then A through F, second, the 6 parts. So 0 through 9 is 10, A through F is 6, 16 values. And so when it hits F, so like if I just look at this here, this 2F, when it hits F in this first one here, then it counts 1 over here. It's not really have to go into number theory about how it works. But generally what happens is if you go find a hexadecimal color, you find a color that you like, you can find the hexadecimal for it there, and it will generally be a 6-character number, 6-character sequence here. Something like the color black is actually 0006, because basically it's 0 value in red. No, there's no lift there. White is the highest number. F is the highest peak on there, so everything is as high as it can possibly be. But in this case, we're going to do pound 2F004F, and I'm going to end the line with a semicolon. End all CSS lines with the semicolon, and then I close the braces or brackets here. So now I have this change that I've done here where I've said I want background color to this 2F004F, close semicolon. This is on your handout. Again, go here and we look at page, here we go, page 4 of our handout. This is this line right here. So you can body, open bracket, background dash color, colon, color value, semicolon, close it, closing bracket. What I do here now is I'm going to save this. Now we're going to go look and see what change we made in our browser. So I'm here, the browser here, and because remember, I've linked this HTML document here with CSS. I'm going to refresh this. Now you can see I've changed the background color. If I go and click and go to my second stories2.html, this also changed to that same purple color because they're both linked to that same style sheet. So save the style sheet and then go look at it in the browser, refresh. Now you'll notice when I did this here, the text got really hard to read. The black does not look good against the purple. Also, my links are really hard to read. The purple of the visited link doesn't really work. The blue doesn't work against the back there. So we're going to go in and we're going to change some of our colors of our text to kind of make it stand up against our background very well. So something when you're designing a web page, you kind of keep contrast. You want your text contrast to be high enough against your background so that it's readable. People don't have to train to try to read what it says. So now we've changed the background, we're going to change the text. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our CSS file here, and continuing in our body, we're changing the body text. I'm here, I'm going to create a new line, so I'm going to do a new property in here, and we're going to do the color. I'm going to do colon. So color, so background color changes the background color of whatever element that you're working with. In this case, color is going to change your font color, text color in whatever is inside the body. So color, colon, space. And the one we use here is actually EAF. Close the line with a semicolon, and everything's already in the brackets there. And these, again, once again, are on the handout. It's this line right here, AB. So we're going to save the document. I'm going to come back and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to refresh this now. Now you can see now my text is now a much more readable color against my background. If I go click more stories, you can see even on this page here, the text got changed as well too, and that's because both web pages are linked to the same style sheet, which means that I'm making one style sheet and affecting both web pages. There's the strength of using CSS to do styling. Now you'll notice that I have things like, for example, my headers are the same color as the text. So my H1, my H2, and my H3. They're the same color as the text. We kind of want to make them maybe stand out a little bit more. In addition, you can see my links are still hard to read. So we're going to style those as well too. Go back to my CSS document. And instead of styling the body text, which we've already done, I'm going to style heading elements. So my H1, H3. And I can do this. If I wanted to, I could go in and write H1 colon and do my styling for that there. Go do H2, write my styling, H3. I could do those if I wanted to style them all differently. But in this case, I want them all to be kind of styled the same. I want them all to change to the same color. So I can do that by entering H1, H2, H3 in my style sheet. And so now I've chosen my three selectors. This case here. So these are the three selectors I'm going to do. And now I'm going to create a new declaration block. Close the brackets. And so now whatever I write in this declaration block will affect all three of these tags at the same time. So we're going to do color, pound, C191, A1. And you know what? I want to do more than just change the I want to do more than change the color. I actually want to also center them. The headings, instead of being pressed up against the side of the page, are in the center of the document. So I'm going to use the text align property, and we're just going to call text align center. Close that. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go in and refresh. And now you can kind of see, you can see it closer here. If I look at the fox and the crow, is that they are a slightly different color. It's not much of a color change, but it is slightly different enough to kind of stand out from the rest of the text that I have on my page here. And you can also see they've been centered in the document. So I'm going to give about 3 minutes. We are actually at the 4 o'clock mark and a lot more to do, so I hope you stick around with me. Run a little bit longer than I would happen. But I'll give you a couple minutes to go in, and if you haven't already, write your fairytales.css document to match kind of what I have here, following steps 3 and 4 on our CSS section. So if you look at our handout, we have CSS, we have opening up a new document, putting in that link if you haven't done it already, and then writing in the background color and the text color and then the heading color on. Yeah, so take about 3 minutes to do up here, so you can match which. Create a file called fairytale.css, save it in the same place that index.html is. You're going to put this link, the HTML document. You're going to kind of just write these different CSS properties. So I said I was going to give about 3 minutes. Any questions? We have a lot of kind of ground to cover. Now you'll notice that with the that we've made, changed the background color and we've changed the font color and the heading color. Links are still the original colors before. And it's worth noting that the links do not match the rest of this color because they're links. They're viewed as a set of text from the rest of your. So in order to style the links, you have to style the A tag itself. So the on the links, what happens is that you can actually, so we could go in and the property that we're changing, the selector is the A tag. Remember when we created an anchor tag, we created it with A, start of the tag there, and closed it with /A. That's always kind of a good way to kind of figure out what the selector is or the element. If you wanted to, there are 4 different properties for links that you can style. If we go look, let's go back and page here. Go into more stories because it's invisible. You can see my links over here. They're a little hard to read because again the contrast is not. But there's the purple, which is the visited link. There's the blue, which is the unvisited link or the normal link. And then what happens is that you can also do, there's also two more properties with links. There's hover. So if you put your mouse over the link, actually set it, change it to a different color. So if I wanted to put my mouse over this and make it turn red because the mouse is over, say, hey, I'm a link. I'm a little bit different than I'm the link that you actually have your mouse over. I could actually adjust what they call the hover properties, a hover. Or if when I click on it, see actually when I click on it, I have my mouse pressed on it here and such, it turns red. This is the active link. This is the link that as middle of clicking that it's going to go do something. It will turn red. I can actually change that color as well too. And so those are shown up by a few different properties. So if I did a link, this would be actually just changing a normal unvisited link. So the default way that a link shows up. I could also do a visited, a hover. So this, when I put my mouse over it, it will change the color right when I'm hovering over it. A active, change the color of the link right when I have clicked, or it goes off to the page. If I wanted to, I could style all four of these different stylings. I can give them different colors. I can give them fonts. I can do whatever I want to differently there. What I'm going to do for this year is we're going to simplify things, and we're just going to change all of our anchor tags to the same color. So I'm going to use the A selector, open bracket, and then in here we're going to do color, just like we changed the text color here or here. Color property. We're going to do A48B. Now, just in case you're wondering, these are not just like random colors that I've just kind of pulled out of blue. I've actually used a color scheme creator on the internet to kind of choose a bunch of colors that are kind of cooperative with each other, that are complementary to each other. They don't clash, but that they show good contrast. So the idea that the text color that I'm using here shows up well against the background color that's there. So there are these kind of color scheme generators that allow you to kind of choose colors that work well with each other, that you don't have, say, like bright yellow on like a background, neon green background, which headaches. So I'm going to close with my semicolon and then close bracket to kind of close the whole thing. Now, if I save this and go back to the page, so there's a lot of going back and forth. Go back to here and I refresh, and now I see now that all of my text color is easier to read against my background. Go back to my story or page here. There's the links kind of being more readable with different colors against my background. So now they're no longer unreadable background that I've selected. You go down here and you can actually see here for each of my stories going out to their sources are also kind of updated to the right color, because I did every single thing that you that anchor link. Okay, so moving on with CSS. One of the things that we may want to do with our page here, so we've done some colors, we've changed our text, we've kind of centered our text. But let's actually make our stories here, the sections with the stories, pop out from the page a bit. We're going to do that there. Remember when before we moved on to the CSS here and such, we marked these div sections. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to do because each of the stories here is marked into its own div. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to make that div kind of styled a little bit differently on the page. And we do that using a concept what they call classes. So what I'll do actually is that I'm back in my index.html page. I'm going to go to this first div that I have for the fox and the crow. So this div that contains the fox and the crow, inside the first div tag, this bracket here, do a space, and I'm going to go in and we're going to say class. Remember before when I did the ID here and said fox? Up here I'm going to say class. I'm going to give it a class attribute. In brackets I'm going to say story. So what I'm doing is I'm saying that this div is part of the class story. So anything that I style, any class styling I do for story, happens to this div. I'm going to do the same thing down here with the woodsman and the crane. The div right before the picture, I'm going to do class equals story. I'm going to save that, and now I'm going to go back to my CSS page. I'm going to go down, I'm going to create a new property. So I'm going to go down here, and I can reference classes by using the dot or period symbol. So I put a dot here, and I type story. And what this is telling me now is allowing me, just like here when I did body and did some styling change here to the body, and so this affected anything in the body, anything that any property that I edit inside the brackets here will affect anything that I've marked as class story. So for example, I want to change the background color of my story, so that makes my stories have a different background color than the rest of the page. So remember, we can use background color property, colon, give it 5F 887, colon, close bracket. So now I'm going to save this. So now what I'm doing is I'm saying the background color of any class, the dot signifies the class, story, should be this color. So what did that do? Let me go back to my web page, refresh. And so now you can see actually each of the different stories now have a different background color. I go click into more stories, look at again, the different stories here has a different color than the background of the page. Again, one change that I made in the CSS affected both of these pages. Let's go. Now we're using the same. We use the same background color that we used before. Okay, so one of the things that you notice on here is that our text goes right up against the right edge of boxes. You do kind of want to maybe give a little space. You want to make it look a little neater. So every object on the World Wide Web has several different properties. One of them is the content itself. So if you look at the fox and the crow, the title here, this has a we have the content, and then around the content there's a bunch of different boxes. Kind of imagine boxes. They're kind of invisible boxes. So around the box there's a box around here that right now it's invisible because we don't have code to reference that box. Between the content and that box is what's called the padding. And so what happens is you can make the box, that invisible box, and so that box determines how far apart. So like a paragraph, these two paragraphs here, there's a box that's, you know, and the weapons, you can see how far apart the content is from the edge of the box, changing padding mechanic. Then you have the box or the border that you can kind of do around there, and then outside of it is the margins, which is actually then how far that box interacts with other boxes on the page. So again, looking at the paragraphs, this paragraph here, it has its own padding between itself and the box, and then there's a separation between the box and the other box. So what we're going to do is have this, we want to actually increase the padding, this here, and the edge of our story class. We're going to come back here to story, and underneath, for all the stories, we're going to come in here. Underneath here, we're going to put the padding property, and we're going to tell it to do 10 pixels. So we're going to give an extra 10 padding inside of our story class. Now you can adjust the padding by right now by just putting padding here. I'm adjusting all four sides of the padding because the box has four sides: the top and bottom, left and right. If I wanted to, I could just do padding right, or I could do padding left, or padding top or bottom. If I wanted to adjust those individually. In this case, I wanted all simultaneously, same amount. Save and refresh again. And now you can see now there's like a little bit of space between the edge by this purple box when the text starts. Kind of increase the padding inside of that box. So there's actually, this is a good example again of those boxes that the content inside the, so the div has a box, div, see the box that contains the div is colored purple, and then the content inside, all this stuff in here, and then padding in between, and then there's the margin. So the margin is the difference between this here. This is actually the margin between this div, and then there's a have that line break. Didn't have that. These would press right up against each other. But I could adjust the margin to kind of make them separate more. So margins is just another property that we can adjust in CSS, but we're not going to cover that here. So we also want to make our table of contents here stand out from the rest of our document as well too. So what we're going to do is for the table of contents, instead of changing the background color, we're going to give it a border or a box around our table of contents. Now, if you remember before when we were doing like the links on the page and we linked to different inside the same documents, we linked to the fox and the crow and the ID attribute. You can also link to specific IDs using CSS, and you can do that with the hashtag symbol. Let's go back and look at our here. For these here, when we linked down to the fox and the crow, so we did the ID. We set the fox and the crow here to be ID fox. And then up here, we reference it by the hashtag fox. We can do that same thing in CSS in that same hashtag. Here's called hashtag contents. So I'm going to reference anything that I give an ID contents. And we're going to give it a border. So we're going to do border. First thing you have to do for a border is you have to define the style of it. And we would just want this to be a solid one. You can dotted, you can dash, different kind of style, border styles that are available by reference online at w3tools.com. Kind of see the border styles. But in this case, we're going to make it a solid border. We have to tell the browser how wide to make the border. So we do border width, and we're going to do 10 pixels. And then we're going to tell it what color we want to border color. So those are the three properties generally. Set up a border, you have to define these three different things. And we're going to do a 8.7, same that we did here, actually, background color. It's going to be the border of the box that we're going to draw around our same background color that our stories has. You can see in every single case, I'm putting a semicolon at the end of each of these. And I'm going to close the whole declaration statement, closing bracket. Save this. Go look at our browser. Fresh. Oh. Okay, so you notice nothing changed. And the reason for that there is that I not assign an ID to my. Come back here, index.html document. Come up here to this div that I put around table of contents. And in div, I'm going to go in, I'm going to put ID equals contents. And I'm doing this on the div and not the h2, because if I did this on h2, then the border I draw will only draw around this line here, this table of contents in the h2. By putting it onto the div here, the border, the box that it will draw, will be all of this stuff here. That's why we did the div. That we mark that section, and we're styling that whole section, and everything that's in that section will get affected the same way. So I'm going to save, go here again, and now you can see there is my box contents. Once again, the power of CSS means that if I go to my stories, it has that same background color, there's that padding, here's the box around. I've been able to do the same change both pages, editing single document. So yeah, so we're just about done. There are a couple of additional ways that you can actually work with CSS too. So done in this case, of course, of this class is we created what they call an external CSS page. So it's a separate file where we put all of our CSS properties. And I could keep going. I mean, I've worked with CSS files that are like 400, 500 lines, tons of stuff in there. And you have to kind of scroll through and find the specific element you're working with. because you can edit any element in HTML, almost any element in HTML, using CSS. Now, sometimes you want to be able to use CSS kind of in a quicker fashion. You don't want to create a separate file, or you may not be able to access the web place where you can actually upload and put in a separate file, but you can edit the HTML. So there are two different ways that you can work with CSS, just the HTML document. The first is what they call an internal style sheet. So external style sheet means that the style sheet lives in a separate file. Internal style sheet means the style sheet lives inside or internally to the HTML document. You can usually put the internal style sheets up in that head section. So that head section that we just started off with just a title, and we also put our link to a style sheet. We can also link it up here as well too. And I'm just going to show like a really quick example of how this works here. Running short on time here. And so we do that there by using the style tag. So if I go in and put in style, I'm now telling the browser that, hey, there's a section here talking about styling this document. And what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to, on my web page, you notice that notice that around the stories here, I have these sharp cornered edges at the edges of the box there. I'm going to make those rounded. I'm going to round those edges there. So I'm going to do style, and we're going to do that by referencing. Remember, .story references anything that's in class story. And so I'm writing this here the same way that I wrote these declarations over here. I'm choosing .story, put in brackets, and then I'm going to put my properties inside here. And this all reads as CSS because it's inside the style tag. Border radius, which is another element to edit border. And we're going to make it 25 pixels. And what that does, that just basically does like a circle. It tells what the radius or the thinking of a circle on there. I can adjust this if I want a sharper or smoother curve. And then close bracket. And then, just like with all my other tags, I need to close style, like that. So this here is my very simple, very basic internal style sheet. Thing about using an internal style sheet is that it only works with the web page that I'm created on. And let me demonstrate what that means. So I'm going to save this, go back to my browser, and refresh. Now you can see the edges of my box here are rounded. But if I go and look at stories 2, this here still has the harsh, sharp corners on there. And the reason for that there is that the styling that I wrote that gave the rounded corners is only affecting this web page. It's not affecting the other web page. So by using internal styling sheets, you lose part of the significant power of using style sheets where you can make a single change and affect all the pages, but it also allows you to kind of pinpoint specific styling change to a specific web page. And so generally the way that it works is this is where the cascading part of cascading style sheets works, is that if I wanted this border here, the table of contents, the border that I drew around there to be a different color on my main page than the other page, I could go in here and write I could use contents, referencing my contents ID, and I could do border color, just like I did before, and make it a different color. Let's make it blue, so you can actually type in just the word blue. And so now, if I go back in and look here, you can see this turned this blue, but over here it's still purple. So I'm able to pinpoint changes to this specific page. And what happens is the browser will load the external style sheet first. So that's in place. So whatever external style sheet is there, and then what happens is then it'll look, is there an internal style sheet? And does the internal style sheet use any of the same properties as external does? And if it does, the internal one takes precedence. So it will load up the external style sheet. So it will learn it up. In this case, it loads up fairytales.css, and then it says, okay, contents. Here's with the contents ID, here's the border that we're putting around it, here's the color that it's using. And then it goes here and says, oh, wait, so it's loaded this, and now it's cascading. It's moving down. It's seeing, oh, this style information here, here it says to make the border color blue. So this here overrides the earlier border color change. And so that's where that, so what happens is the internal styling sheet will take precedence, will be more important than the external one with the rules that it sets. So it allows you to kind of pinpoint specific changes. Now, as I mentioned, there's two different ways that you can actually have the CSS in the HTML document as well too. Other way is what they call inline, which means that you're actually able to do styling specifically, style specifically an HTML like line that you have. And the quick example I'm going to use of this here is, if you remember, way at the beginning, or kind of near the beginning, we took the moral of our story here. Flatterer lives at the expense of those who will live with him. We put these emphasis tags around them, made it italicized with those emphasis tags. Instead of using HTML tags to emphasize those, we can CSS right in here. And what we'll do is we're going to use CSS inline to affect this paragraph tag, this paragraph here specifically. So how I do it is I go inside the paragraph tag that I want to adjust, and I use style, just like I did up in my header, but I'm using style as an attribute. So I do style equals, and then in quotes, and then I can write my CSS properties. So the CSS properties, different things here, I can write them in a single line right in here, separated by a semicolon. So for example, I'm going to change the color, font color of this line, of this paragraph, color, colon, and I'm going to do the same FF0000. Remember before, I am maxing out the red and zeroing out the green and the blue. Semicolon to separate to a different property. I'm going to do font style, and we're going to call it italic. Semicolon, close quote. So this here, this style here, is just a very miniature version of what I did up here. It is only affecting this paragraph element. Save, and let's go see what that looks like. Save, and you can see right down here, this turned red. Not any of my other paragraphs turned red, just this one. So that is inline CSS. That, I'm running really short on time. I apologize this year. I've run really long. You have, congratulations, you have created an HTML and CSS page from scratch using some very basic tools. Right now, this is the end of our current class schedule. See on here. So right now I don't have anything else scheduled. Keep an eye on the Ferguson Library's newsletter and our website to see what's coming up. Before you leave, thank you for attending. I would appreciate if actually you would go survey here at 506 or projectoutcome.org/responses/5064. This is available on the online tech classes under the basic HTML. It's underneath all the handouts as well. Use this opportunity to tell me how you did with this class, as well as give me suggestions for what you want me to possibly see as I work. I've got to get going. If you have questions, feel free to contact us at the Ferguson Library through our Contact Us form or with our online chat that we have available. Thank you for attending, and goodbye. I hope you have a really good weekend and a good week, and I'll see you again in the future with some of our future programming.